Democratic Party. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Attention all football fans. If you can't see your team play, come and dine with us and watch it live at Boardman, Canfield, or Cortland. Or staying at home, we'll deliver right to your door. That's Coca's Pizza. We serve it hot.
Hey, this is The Other Side. Glad to be with you. And we're just doing our thing. Mario's here on the other side running the controls. And yeah, well, you're doing a great job. But of course, there's a whole lot. This show is chock full of stuff today because there's so much going on with the tragic passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg on Friday. And before she's even buried, it seems like the Republicans are going to try to get her a replacement real quick. Of course, you know, I could explain all this to you, but the main thing I want to say is this. It's notable that before Ginsburg, even before she was a Supreme Court justice, as a lawyer, she dealt with a lot of very serious cases. She was the first in her class. There was only like 6 women and 500 men, but she was the first in her class. Yet after she graduated, she couldn't get a job back in the late 50s, early 60s. But she went on about her business and eventually found her way into the law. And one of the things she did, do you realize that in the early 60s, a woman couldn't even get a credit card without her husband co-signing? A woman couldn't get a mortgage. There were a whole lot of things like that. As far as the equal pay, that's actually still somewhat of an issue, equal pay for women doing equal work. Things we take for granted, and she was a champion. Also, the thing with her, if you want to know the difference between a liberal justice and a conservative justice, you're going to be hearing a lot in coming days. The conservatives, they would have you think. Basically, they look at the Constitution as almost like the 10 Commandments. It's set in stone, and there shouldn't be any you'll hear them talk about, as Justice Ginsburg's friend, Justice Scalia, used to describe it. He described himself, I should say, as an originalist. That is, they believe that the Constitution, as I said, we should be interpreted literally and make leave no leeway for changes that have taken place since. When the Constitution was written, men only could vote. When the Constitution was written, I would not be considered a full human being. When the Constitution was written, women were really second-class citizens in so many ways. And the Native Americans weren't even considered citizens, even though this was their land first. So there was a lot of things that have changed. And the difference I was trying to explain between conservatives and liberal justices is that the liberal justice tends to look at the Constitution as a living, breathing document. That is, it evolves. And by the way, the founders did put a mechanism to add amendments to the Constitution. So apparently some of them thought that it wasn't an end-all be-all, that they had no way of knowing what's coming in the future. But they knew that they needed to leave room for a growing country to have a growing Constitution. So let's start out by looking at Friday night's ABC. Let's see, was that Friday? I know she passed on Friday, but I can't remember if this was from the weekend edition or the Friday night edition of ABC World News Tonight, but let's check it out on Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
A trailblazer for gender equality and a powerhouse on the Supreme Court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in her own words tonight.
I do think that I was born under a very bright star.
I, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I am a Brooklynite, born and bred.
I love my job. It's the best and the hardest job that I have ever had. It has kept me going through 4 cancer bouts. I have to read this set of briefs, go over the draft opinion, and so I have to somehow surmount whatever is going on in my body. Because I'm a public figure, I could help make things a little better for people who are in my situation. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. If you want to be a true professional, you will do something outside yourself, something to make life a little better for people less fortunate than you. A meaningful life is one lives not just for oneself, but for one's community.
And there you go. That's from ABC World News Tonight. And that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her own words. And I think she was a public servant. And come on, folks, she could have retired probably a couple of decades ago, or at least 15 years ago. But instead, she went through multiple battles with cancer. She wanted to stay on the job. She recognized her position, particularly as the composition of the court changed. It went from a liberal majority to a conservative majority, and it looks like it will be even more conservative after the president makes an appointment. Well, I should say, puts his nominee out there, and then that nominee goes before Congress. It's all but a done deal. This is handled, it's not the whole Congress, it's just the Senate. And the Senate is, of course, presided over by Mitch McConnell, and the Republicans are not giving an inch on this, even though they kept Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee lingering for 9 months in an election year. That was their rationale. Now here we are, approaching 40 days before the election, but suddenly when they're in charge, it's all good. And then they say that if the shoe were on the other foot, you'd do the same thing. Well, we'll see what happens. This should be particularly interesting if President Trump doesn't win. That means that even though he'll be on the way out the door, he would have put 3 Supreme Court justices in place, and that will tie him with Ronald Reagan. But let's take a look at this. This is a little extra also from 60 Minutes Overtime, and this is they did a segment on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's interpretation. I've been talking about this, how she interprets the Constitution.
60 Minutes Rewind.
My view of the Constitution particularly is quite different. The framers were writing that Constitution at the end of the 18th century, but they were writing a document that they hoped would survive through the ages from one generation to another. I would describe my view of the Constitution as very much in line with Justice Thurgood Marshall's view. When the Constitution was 200 years old, there were celebrations across the land. And Justice Marshall said, I celebrate not the Constitution that was published in 1787, but what the Constitution has become over 2 centuries of sometimes turbulent existence of the United States. I take my cue from the preamble to the Constitution, which reads, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." Who were we the people in 1787? You would not be among we the people. African Americans would not be among the people. The women weren't there. African Americans weren't there. Even white men who owned no property. The genius of the United States is that over now the course of more than 2 centuries, the notion of we the people has become ever larger, so that people who were once left out, like women, like African Americans, like Native Americans, are now part of that we the people. So I see the Constitution as striving for a more perfect union. And the framers included, particularly in the Bill of Rights, some grandly general clauses like the equal protection of the laws. No state shall deny to any person the equal protection of the laws. All people are entitled to due process of law. What does the Equal Protection Clause mean today? What did it mean in 1868? 1868 is when those words became part of the Constitution. Women didn't have the right to vote until many years later, until 1920. So should I read the Equal Protection Clause to say it doesn't include women? They weren't thinking about the equal stature of men and women. No, I read those words to say there was an ideal of equality.
And those are her thoughts, and I kind of think I explained it pretty well. I want to keep moving today because, as I said, I've got a lot of stuff I want to show you. But that, the thing was that we're all human beings, and the great thing about it, there's a line in I can't remember if that's from the I believe that's in the Declaration of Independence I'm thinking of, in the course of human events. But the thing is, they used to talk about humanity, but as she stated there, it wasn't being applied to all of humanity. It was being applied to white men who owned land. If you'll notice what she said there, if you were a white man who didn't own land, you couldn't vote. If you were a black person, you certainly couldn't vote. And if you were a woman, you couldn't vote. So this government, our way of doing business, has evolved over time, has changed with the times. I support Ginsburg's view of the Constitution, that it should be a living, breathing document so that it serves the needs of its people. Now, I know Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But I think the Constitution was meant to be the rules of the road, so to speak. And it is saying that, we, the people of the United States, that is what the rules that we run our government by, the expectations from our government to stay out of our private space, to respect us as human beings, every single one of us, man, woman, black, white, and in between, gay or straight. Now we've even addressed that aspect of it. But let's further coverage of this, though, and this was a big story. She was the second woman named to the Supreme Court after Sandra Day O'Connor, but I think her significant contributions overshadowed O'Connor, and she's compared more to the first black justice of the Supreme Court, who did a lot for civil rights. Thurgood Marshall was that person. But let's take a look. By the way, and he was nominated, I should say, by Lyndon Baines Johnson. But let's take a look. This is coverage where they're talking about on CBS-N how her death will reshape the political landscape.
Passing Friday, the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had become a top campaign issue. Now the focus of the election looks much different. Republicans are attempting to secure President Trump's third lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. That's more than any president has had since Ronald Reagan. Mr. Trump says he will nominate a woman to Ginsburg's seat as early as this weekend after services for the late justice. But he does not appear willing to honor her dying wish that she not be replaced until after the election. This morning, the president baselessly claimed the comments, as reported by NPR, may have come from Democratic leaders like Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, or Nancy Pelosi. Here's how he responded when asked about it this afternoon.
Supposedly the last wishes of Justice Ginsburg were made up because it supposedly came from her granddaughter.
Yeah, it just sounds to me like it would be somebody else. I don't believe it could be, and it might not be too.
Sir, what would be
it was just too convenient.
This morning, the president told Fox News he has 5 nominees under consideration, including federal judges Amy Coney Barrett, Barbara Lagoa, and Allison Rushing. Once selected, the nomination will then go to the Republican-controlled Senate. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has promised President Trump's nominee will get a vote. So far, 2 Republican senators, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, have come out against filling the seat before the results of the presidential election are known. But it would take 4 Republican no votes to block a nomination.
Well, and that's pretty interesting that you only have 2 Republican women who have stepped forward to say they're opposed to moving forward with this. I guess it just goes to show that those 2 women have more balls than all the Republican men in the Senate, because they appear to be going with the president. And there was hope that maybe Mitt Romney or Charles Grassley might change over, but they've both said, as of today, that they are going with the president on this. So unless there's some brave soul, or we need a couple of brave souls out there, this is going forward. So there's really not much Democrats can do. And I wish they would consider, being this close to an election, how they handle this. I know there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of helplessness, but don't do what you did with Kavanaugh, because I think if you want to just hand the election to Donald Trump, start climbing up on monuments and beating on doors and all that. I don't mind the protests like they're doing in front of McConnell's house and Lindsey Graham's house, but don't let that get carried away either. I think there's something that Ginsburg said, that if you're going to protest against something, you should do it in a way. I feel like going out there and grabbing this lady. So, hey, we're trying to do a show here, but and I hate to acknowledge that, but it's kind of irritating me. But anyway, she said when you're trying to lead, you should do something in a way that makes somebody want to follow. And by burning things down and acting crazy, that is not accomplishing that. Anyway, you know what? I'm actually going to do this. Hold on just a minute. I'm sorry. Okay, that's unusual, but you know it's live. Okay. All right. Anyway, that's the first. I bet Edward R. Murrow never did that back in the old radio days. But anyway, so.
Should ask them their opinion.
All right. All right, because she was just echoing, man. It's like, sorry. Okay, but now let's get back on track. So, let me see, where was I? What was I talking about? Oh, well, let's talk about the inconsistency here. Let's forget all the other stuff I talked about. The inconsistency, as in 2016, when Barack Obama's nominee lingered for 9 months, and Mitch McConnell refused to even give this man a hearing. And they gave the following reasons. All these Republicans gave the reasons why it was too close to the election. There's a big difference between 9 months and 45 or less days. But it seems that they've all had a change of heart.
The next president, whoever that may be, is going to be the person who chooses the next Supreme Court justice.
It is essential to the institution of the Senate and to the very health of our republic not to launch our nation into a partisan, divisive confirmation battle during the very same time the American people are casting ballots to elect our next president.
It's up to the American people in this next election to make the nomination for this important seat on the Supreme Court.
For the last 80 years, the Senate has not confirmed any nominee nominated during an election year, and we should not do so this time either.
We're not going to nominate a Supreme Court justice until the people have spoken.
There's going to be an election, and then the new president will have an opportunity to nominate someone in the Senate to confirm them.
The people deserve to be heard, and they should be allowed to decide through their vote for the next president the type of person that should be on the Supreme Court.
That's the right thing to do, and it's the respect that the American people are owed.
If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right.
I think the next president should make the pick. I would be not in favor of going forward.
Well, like I said, how times have changed. Now they are for going forward. By the way, that's courtesy of the Lincoln Project. That's a group of Republicans who are absolutely opposed to Donald Trump being reelected, so much so that they're backing Joe Biden. but you're going to see a lot of political strategy taking place in the next week or so. And one of the more interesting ideas was proposed by Rush Limbaugh. Limbaugh knows that these hearings will turn into somewhat of a showcase for the Democrats, and they can pound this nominee to death. But then again, that's the way it's always been done, at least in the age of radio and television. That person, well, there's always been hearings, but as far as it becoming a public spectacle, that's normal. And I think people should have a chance to look at the person who will be making decisions for them for decades to come. These are lifetime appointments. And of course, as I brought up earlier, the Kavanaugh situation I thought was toxic. I understand the people, but there was so much wrong with that it was an unwinnable battle. And it brought out so many negative emotions, and it really showed some Democrats in a very bad light as far as when the protests started and some of the, it was what it was. And it doesn't, as far as Dr. Blasey Ford, I am not saying whether she was telling the truth or not. A lot of people thought she was credible. But what I'm saying is it was an unwinnable battle, and it really just served to poison the well. And you knew that even if Kavanaugh wasn't the nominee, the eventual nominee would still be a conservative Republican. So what was the point? But in this case, same situation, unfortunately. The eventual nominee and justice will be a conservative Republican. But Rush has an idea to kind of make it go a little easier for that nominee and the Republicans.
But, I mentioned that the Judiciary Committee does not have to do its thing. It's become a tradition, but it's not a requirement. And since Trump has already driven them crazy, since Trump's already, long before today, they are crazy, then why not just blow up another tradition? Because I'll tell you, that's how we're going to maintain the ones that matter. It is the very traditions and institutions that define this country that the left has in its crosshairs. They have to be defeated. This Supreme Court seat has to be confirmed. It has to be named and confirmed before the election. All this talk about waiting until after the election. Donald Trump was elected in 2016 on the very basis of the fact that he had a list of names, and people were able to judge those names and his candidacy as a result. The 2020 election has nothing to do with this Supreme Court seat, folks. It has nothing to do with it. Don't fall for this idea that, this is so close to the election. We need to wait. We need to wait for the election so that the right president gets to make. No. We've already voted on the president gets to make this pick, and Donald Trump is he. The 2016 election is what this nomination is about, not the 2020 election, both in terms of timeline, legalities, and common sense. The 2020 election has nothing to do with this Supreme Court opening.
And welcome back. Well, there's Rush. So there's the idea. Let's just skip all that. And he is right. There's no legal mandate that these hearings be held, but traditionally they have been held. And they're trying to chip away at every institution there is. When he talk, on one hand, you have on the left people talking about blowing the establishment up and starting over, but you see there Limbaugh taking delight in the many precedents that this president has broken during the past 4 years, as far as even if you look at the fact that he accepted the nomination from the White House, typically not done. You don't politicize the White House. The last president that had done that was Franklin Roosevelt in 1940. So anyway, all these changes have taken place, and we'll see where this goes. But there's another topic that needs to be discussed. You're going to be hearing enough about the Supreme Court nomination in coming days and maybe even weeks, I assure you. But let's take a look at another milestone that we've hit, and that is COVID-19. We've actually reached 200,000 deaths, according to the sources that track such things. By the way, another thing I'll bring up beforehand, and did you see the CDC reverse themselves talking about particles, particulate, the particles from your mouth, and how long those airborne particles can be a threat and that kind of thing. This is what hurts them. Science, of course, evolves. Religion stays the same. Science evolves as knowledge is gained. But to a lot of laymen out there, the posts I see all the time are people saying stuff like, well, make up your mind. You know, these so-called experts, well, in the case of Fauci, for example, I would think if the guy's worked for every president since Reagan, he must know something about what he's talking about. And I want to, real quick before we go to this clip, something happened to me yesterday that I found very interesting. A friend of mine, we were going to meet for lunch, and I will not name the restaurant because my past experiences there have been nothing like this, and I think they pay attention to their protocols. But yesterday, I go to eat with a friend, and we sit down, and all of a sudden I notice that my waiter's, and we're outside on the patio, and I notice that my waiter's mask is around his neck. And I didn't want to, push too hard. I kind of gave him a little nudge. I said, hey man, mask. To which he responded, I don't believe in that shit. Wow, really? Well, by the way, pro tip, if you want a tip, don't ever say that to a customer, okay? But then I said, because I just heard the news, 200,000 people are dead of this. And he said, do you know anybody who died? I said, no, but that's not my criteria. I tell you what, we're not going to, we already had our drinks, our Coke and our water. I said, I think we're going to go somewhere else. That's fine. I got this. And then I went in and I told the wait staff, I believe that was the wait supervisor, I told her what happened. And, and she was just begging because I knew the one lady from a previous restaurant, we always enjoy each other's conversation. And she begged me not to go, but I said, look, I'll be back, but I will not eat here today. And I don't know what his problem is, but somebody needs to talk to him. Yeah, that's the other thing he said. It's fake. That S is fake. And I'm thinking, yeah, so the whole world is in on this big hoax. When people say that, that's what gets me. That's what a pandemic means. People are dying around the world. You can see the news coverage. You can see the governments. Their economies are taking a hit. By the way, they're having a second wave in England. Boris Johnson is pondering another possible shutdown. So, man, these people are really going all out for this hoax, aren't they? How stupid can you be? But let's take a look at, this is from Republican voters against Trump, and this is a real person, and she happens to be a nurse, but she hasn't been able to work as a nurse because she's been having to, while the essential workers in her family, I would think a nurse was essential, but apparently they're more essential, so she's covering for them at home. But she just gave her candid reason why she is a Republican, but she will not be voting for Donald Trump.
I'm frustrated because if Trump gets elected again, not only are more people going to die, but our country, as bad as it is now, could end up in a war. I didn't vote for him in 2016. I'm a Republican. I didn't vote for him in 2016 because I knew a failed businessman had no business as a president of the United States. Everybody's frustrated, everybody's tired, and I've passed it. And I just want people to know we don't have to live like this. We don't have to live like this. It didn't have to be this way. We didn't have to lose 200,000 people. 200,000, that's unfathomable. I was going to give you a big speech about Christianity and being a Republican, but this is what you got. So use it or you don't use it.
So there's one person, and I would say that her comments were heartfelt. And even though it's unbelievable that the that even it's unbelievable that the president is still patting himself on the back, even as we hit this landmark of 200,000 deaths and growing. But that's where we're at. He's so proud of himself. And let's see. Actually, oh, I know where we are there. No, that one, that might be out of place.
This is the clip you sent twice.
Oh, okay. In that case, okay, we're doing live production. In that case, you need to go to, hold on just a second.
Okay.
You need to go to, well, I had this, 145 on there.
Where I'm at?
Oh, okay. Well, I can't tell this kid anything. Okay, well, then
At least today.
Then let it roll, my man. Let it roll.
Americans have died from the coronavirus, and the White House and CDC director are still at odds over when a vaccine might be available. At his campaign event in Delaware, Democratic nominee Joe Biden blamed the president for the death toll.
Only the president has acted sooner. Back in May, Columbia University released a study that said that if the president had acted just 1 week sooner, we would have saved 36,000 lives. Today, the leading model being used to track the virus, one which the White House and many others rely on, that model says between now and the end of this year, while we're waiting for a vaccine, between now and the end of the year, we're going to lose up to 200,000 additional lives. Due to Donald Trump's lies and incompetence in the past 6 months, have seen one of the gravest losses of American life in history.
Let's bring in.
So that's the reality of the situation. That's Joe Biden's comments. Not exactly Mr. Excitement, I know, but at least he's wearing a mask. He's still leading in the polls. And I think he takes this a lot more seriously. I think he expresses compassion a lot better than the current president. But we'll see what the people decide on November 3rd. I think the president, in fact, if you'll take a look at, this is from a group called The Recount, and they take a look at some things the president has said and how people are reacting to it.
The United States has reached a grim milestone in the COVID-19 pandemic.
More than 200,000 Americans have now died from the virus, and the U.S. is nearing 7 million confirmed cases.
President Trump this morning again denies the reality.
We're rounding the corner on the pandemic, and we've done a phenomenal job, not just a good job. On the job itself, we take an A+.
Yeah, it's the worst curve in the history of grading.
Arguably, the president's biggest weak point is his administration's response to the pandemic.
According to ABC News and Ipsos, only 27% say they have a great deal or good amount of confidence
in Mr. Trump to confirm the safety of a vaccine. In the NBC News and Wall Street Journal poll, voters gave Biden a double-digit edge on both health care and coronavirus.
Well, that's good news. But of course, the coronavirus situation for some has been overtaken by the replacement of a Supreme Court justice, which, by the way, that's been interesting. Some of the polling on that wasn't a major issue for a lot of Democrats, went up to almost 25% of Republicans. Oh, that was the reason they voted for Donald Trump, because they thought that he would install conservative, of course he would, conservative justices. That was very important to them. And by the way, the Republicans have been planning this strategically for, I think this has been decades. They've been trying to make this happen the same way they've been trying, because of course, if you get that conservative majority, they might go after Roe v. Wade, the abortion bill, which has been the law of the land since 1973, and which they're worried that, well, you've already had the John Roberts, who is Chief Justice, make the comment that he considers it settled law. So they can't count on a conservative to vote against Roe v. Wade, because he said it's the law of the land and he doesn't see any reason to go after it. But if they pack the court with people who are very conservative, they'll figure some way to do away with it. Now, if you're pro-abortion, that's fine. I mean, pardon me, if you're pro-choice, no, I meant it the other way around. If you're anti-abortion, oh, this is like opposite day. If you're anti-abortion, you're probably rooting for this. But we'll just see how it works out. I mean, maybe ultimately, because sometimes what happens is these people are put in these posts and they might be conservatives, but as they read the law, and that's what matters, not your personal politics or your religion, but what does the law say? The Constitution says that the judicial branch should interpret the law. So their job will be to look at Roe v. Wade and other laws and decide if they are solid laws. But we'll see what happens there. But here's something, though, that, yeah, this goes real quick, folks, but I kind of, and you know he won't keep his promise, but Donald Trump was asked, what happens if he loses the election? And he kind of responded in this fashion.
Patriots, 43 days from now. Can you believe it? 43 days. We're going to again win Ohio. I understand from Bob Paduchek. You know, Bob? That we're going to win it by more than we did. What did we win it? 9. We won by 9 points. I just came into that big, beautiful plane. It's got more televisions than any plane in history. They've got televisions in closets, in bathrooms, on the floor, on the ceilings. And I just saw that we're tied in Ohio. I don't think so. They say President Trump may have a slim lead in Ohio. They're not even campaigning in Ohio, come to think of it. No, they're fake polls. They're almost as fake as the writers themselves. They're all fake. Remember last time they...
Well, that wasn't the one I thought, so I sent the wrong clip. But you see what he's doing there. I'll give it away since I didn't send it. Hold on, I should have.
Was it this one?
Yes, it was that one.
It was sent after.
Okay.
That one. So
okay.
We can play it.
We can play it. Well, then let's play that.
All right, give me just.
All right, let him set it up. But in fact, this was so. This was such, and I thought this was a. I thought this was a parody, but apparently Joe Biden was so impressed by what the president said that he decided to use it in one of his ads, and I think he used it quite effectively.
If I lose to him, I don't know what I'm going to do. I will never speak to you again. You'll never see me again.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
If only he does lose, and if only he keeps that promise. Wouldn't it be a beautiful world? But we'll see what happens. If Donald Trump loses, he'll probably be on Fox and Friends the next morning. So, the morning after Joe Biden is inaugurated. But, speaking of that, though, and this may be a little, sometimes these things, it's a matter of proportion. You may not see the reporter, but I think you'll see the people who are being questioned. It was just the way they had this formatted. And this is from the Young Turks, which is, of course, a liberal opinion site, I guess you'd call it, not a news site. But they had one of their people out in the field at a Trump rally, or at least right before a Trump rally, and asking Trump voters, what would they do if Biden wins?
Result if Joe Biden wins?
No.
Under any circumstance?
No.
Why is that?
Because it's lies and deceit and corruption.
I'll be down on my knees praying a lot harder.
Praying for Joe Biden's success or praying for 4 years from now replacing Joe Biden?
Praying for God to help us.
President Biden, that can't happen. I can't even think about that because he does not like America. He's a racist. Now that's a racist. If you want to look at someone who despises the black man, the black woman, he looks out for himself. He's a crook. His son is a crook. He's a criminal.
What happens if Donald Trump loses? Do you have a fear for the country if Donald Trump? You're nodding your head. I'll go. Okay, you can. Well, I'll ask both of you.
We actually have plans to move to Panama because it's a city or it's a country that allows Americans to move there and to actually own firearms there. I mean, if they trust us enough to own firearms as people with legal right to be in their country. It seems like a place that's not planning to do something terrible to their people.
But if he wins, it means the Democratic machine has won in some of the illegal tactics that, the voter fraud. I think that if he loses, they come after all of us supporters.
I've actually considered leaving the country, moving to South America or something like that, if something like that happens. I've had neighbors that moved when Hillary was running against President Trump because he was convinced Hillary was going to win. He sold everything and moved to Panama. So I'm thinking, you know, my ancestors did that back in the 1900s when they left Germany. So
I would hurt for my grandchildren. I'm in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter of life for me, and can't much happen to me in the meantime, but I hurt for my grandchildren and the people of America's children and grandchildren.
If in another world Joe Biden was to win, he'd be my president. Now, he wouldn't be the president, or he'd be the president. Let me correct that. Make sure you edit that. But he would not be the president that I chose, and but you have to live with it.
Joe Biden becomes president. What does that mean for you?
World's going to hell in a handbasket. I'm sorry. The man is sad because they are propping him up. If you notice any of his speeches or whatever, he can't even complete a sentence. And I'm sorry, his mind is starting to fade.
I'll accept the result. However, I don't think he's capable. I think, quite honestly, he's too mentally far gone. Any of the other candidates on the Democrat side, I don't know if they'd do a better job, but they definitely would be more mentally capable than him, which is just an unfortunate scenario.
I think it'll be.
Yeah, well, so there you go, folks. You heard the man. If Biden wins, hell in a handbasket. I like the guy who says that Biden can't complete a sentence, because if you've listened, you notice on one end, on one hand, they're saying that he's mentally incapable. On the other hand, you've got Trump saying before the debate there should be a drug test. So he's trying to say if Biden comes off good that night, it's only because he's been shot full of drugs. But, man, these people have a very different view of this country than I do. I think the bigger threat for this country is not Joe Biden. It's the man that's there now. It's the man that's there talking about you hear he's talking about basically patriotic education. All that is a whitewash. There's a thing out there called the 1609 Project. It documents when the first slaves were brought to America. He's highly offended by that. He wants that to go away because he thinks that just instills hate. Hey, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Good people and good countries make mistakes. Better countries and better people admit those mistakes. And this thing of trying to whitewash it all away, he wants to change it to the 1776 Project. So basically, let's overlook the slavery. Let's overlook the way the Native Americans were treated. Let's overlook the fact that women were treated as subhumans. And let's just talk about all the good stuff. Hey, everybody, get your flag out and wave. Well, that's not history. That's propaganda. And that's what Hitler did. He talked about none, and I'm not saying that Trump's lighting the ovens or anything. I'm just saying that forget Hitler. I think that's the move of fascists. That's the move of tyrants and dictators. That not only will they tell you who the good American is, they will tell that good American a embellished history of their country. And that's what you're going to be getting out of this president. Now, by the way, you can go too far the other way. You can focus too much on the negative, and some say the far left does that. You know, everything, if they get a ticket for speeding, somehow it has something to do with slavery. I know that type. They make me sick because they inflame people, and you won't even consider the real issues because you're thinking, the proverbial race card is being played. I'm not talking about playing race cards. I'm just talking about looking at the facts over history in this country. And I think the United States has overwhelmingly been a positive influence on the world, but I think that we've also done some pretty dirty things in the world. Why did Iranians hate us? Because our CIA assassinated their democratically elected leader back in the 50s. A lot of people don't even remember that. Or we've shot other people other places. We've gone into South and Central America and done things like that. Of course, the Russians do those things and Israelis do those things too. But I'm just saying, don't expect everybody to love you when you're dropping missiles on them or historically you've mistreated them somehow. There's a reason for some of that. I'm not saying, and acknowledging those mistakes doesn't make you any less of an American. if you really love this country, you've got to accept it with the good and the bad. But real quick, I can't believe I've ignored the screen. Robert says, rest in peace, RBG. And, oh, there's one. Hold on, let me scroll. Raymond says, when do Dems step up and start fighting dirty? One thing that upsets me is that Dems just always play nice. Those that voted for Captain Cantaloupe got exactly what they wanted. And that's scary for my children. A remark I made earlier, Chris says, Trump will be on Fox and Friends the day after the inauguration, regardless of the winner. Well, that's true. He'll probably even come to the studio and give Steve Ducey a high five. Thanks for helping me, pal. So anyway, but here's some semi-good news. The president even alluded to it, the fact that, you know, he won big in Ohio back in 2016, but some of those margins have slipped. And I don't know if you've noticed, now the Biden signs are starting to show up. So apparently some people might have changed their affiliations. And maybe some people who didn't get out last time will definitely be getting out this time for Joe Biden. But let's take a look at the suburbs. And if you're not a reader, just let me tell you what that said, that the president is losing his edge. Places that were strongholds for him are not so strong now. And the gap is closing significantly among suburbanites. The others, they tend to be more educated, and maybe they gave the president a chance and said, let's try something different, let's shake things up. I always hate it to hear people say that because I don't know, as I've said before, the only problem with a bull in the china shop is that they leave a lot of droppings behind. And believe me, when it comes to BS, this president is supreme. But so they brought in the guy to shake things up, but maybe he turned out not to be the person they thought he would be. Maybe they assumed, as I did, that he would, as Obama put it, feel the weight of the presidency and change the way he did things. He's still the same buffoon who ran in 2016, if not worse. So if you were thinking that he would become a more sober presidential individual, well, I guess you're disappointed. But like I said, at least it's semi-hopeful that he is losing ground in Ohio. And by the way, did you notice the other day, Cleveland, Ohio surpassed Detroit as one of the poorest cities in America? We have two of the poorest cities in America, big cities, Cincinnati and Cleveland. So he wants to hang his hat on that, he can, but I don't think that's making America great again, Mr. President. He's also pretty close in Minnesota, which Hillary won last time. He's close in Wisconsin, which he barely won last time, and I'm talking about by decimal points. He's behind in Michigan. He's tied or behind in Pennsylvania. I keep telling you this, 2020 is not 2016. The polling's all different. And even though, and Biden is ahead, just like Hillary was ahead, but his favorables are much higher than hers. So we got to get out of here. But I just wanted to tell you, excuse my stumbling over my tongue and that kind of thing. But I want to thank Mario for doing his usual job. I want to thank you folks for joining us back on Thursday. I'm Mo Ray, saying, as I always say, keep your eyes on the prize.